Sí, Guillermo, pones la conferencia siguiente.
Is this working? Is this working? That's it. Yeah. Will you project it here? Is this working?
Yeah.
Just the one. Can you, if I, okay, you sure? Okay.
Muy bien, pues vamos a continuar con la sesión de hoy y en esta ocasión me complace presentar al señor ministro Douglas Wagland of Pitcruvie, que va a presentar la conferencia Scotland Heraldry, the Pageantry of Identity. Cuando quiera, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. My subject this afternoon is in fact the Scotland's heraldry, and not Scotch heraldry, which I more associate with Scotch whisky, I must say. But to continue. From ancient times, symbols and emblems have been used among mankind to distinguish tribe from tribe, nation from nation, and family from family. In battle, on foot or mounted, men wearing armour could see little and could not identify each other or distinguish between friend and foe. Where better to place a sign of identification than on the largest plain surface available, the shield. If not at war, the armoured knight was playing at war. The tournament, a war game par excellence, and when the knight would display his personal shield device on a regular basis, the very essence of heraldry. And when the next generation of knights used the self-same symbol in war or tournament, the hereditary use of a device on a shield again established the concept of heraldry on a firm footing. Personal insignia had become hereditary and truly heraldic. Thereafter, a wide range of factors, feudal, familial, and social among them, influenced the choice of symbol. The Second Crusade increased so much the ensigns of armorial bearings that it became necessary to adopt the graphic principles brought from the Orient by the King of France, Louis VII, and aided by French armorists, there came into being the art of heraldry, or blazonry, being the science to describe an escutcheon or shield in heraldic terms, from the adoption of the blazon, or horn, with which the herald blazed and published the king's will. Before, as I hope today, to expand on that subject, may we reflect on the words of Lord Byron, the English poet, peer, and politician, who became a revolutionary in the Greek War of Independence, who said, "Most historians seem to suppose all their readers are equally learned, and by that error seldom explain the origin of antique and foreign images implanted among us." As I feel sure that I have this afternoon the good fortune to be addressing an audience which can only be described as learned, but nevertheless perhaps I can use this opportunity to shed some light on images and things which may increase knowledge or prompt recollection. All will be revealed. The early coats of arms were simple geometric shapes, almost certainly arising from the strengthening bands of wood consisting of vertical, horizontal, or diagonal lines which are now known collectively in heraldic terms as ordinaries, which are really the basic of heraldry, and developed into more complex patterns, including beasts, flowers, and everyday objects of the time. The symbolism which gave rise to personal coats of arms in the quest for identity first appeared in Scotland in the 12th century, and the earliest known rolls of emblazoned Scottish arms appears in the famous Armorial de Gelry, which contained 42 Scottish heraldic bearings and probably dates from the period 1340-1360. However, another researcher, Dr. Bruce McAndrew, provides ample evidence of material of Scottish interest in earlier English and continental armorials. It is often claimed that the Scottish form of heraldry is the purest in the world, both in form and in regulation. Both of these matters are within the domain of one of the great officers of state in Scotland, the Lord Lion, King of Arms. He is a member of the Royal Household of Scotland and grants armorial bearings on behalf of the sovereign. In a monarchy, such as Great Britain and Northern Ireland, the sovereign from whom as the fountain of honour all rank and titular distinctions flow. It is appropriate, therefore, in our study of Scottish heraldry and the quest for identity, to consider the royal arms, those armorial bearings which have through years identified the sovereign. The famous Red Lion of Scotland, with the famous royal tressure, the narrow double-line border charged with fleur-de-lis, pointing alternately in and out, flory counter flory, appears on a manuscript of 1244 and is depicted by Matthew Paris, the Benedictine monk, in his Historia Anglorum, about 1260, to be found in the British Library. However, King William the Lion, 1165-1214, may have been the first to bear the red lion rampant on his shield. Certainly it appears depicted on the Great Seal of his son Alexander II, 1198-1249, and later on the seal of King David, 1324-1371. There followed some time later an attempt by the Scottish Parliament to get rid of the royal tressure, passing an act stating the king ordained that in time to come there should be no double tressure about his arms, but that he should bear whole arms of the lion without any more. This was never put into operation, save for the removal of the top of the tressure. The royal arms depicted here are those of a cast on a carving which was once mounted on the boundary wall of Paisley Abbey, and clearly shows the removal of the top of the tressure, which was later restored by James the Fourth, 1495 to 1519. Well, let us again refer to the royal arms. And encircling the shield of the royal arms is the colour of the most ancient and most noble order of the thistle, second only to the order of the garter in England. James VII established the order in 1687. There's no evidence to demonstrate the thistle as a Scottish symbol before 1470, when it appears on a silver coin known as a groat of that date. James II had the thistle depicted on a sacred banner dedicated to St. Andrew, the Apostle, or the titular state of Scotland, and hence it became the national flower of Scotland. Although the arms of Scotland have remained largely unchanged, it was James VI who became James I of England in 1603, following the union of the crowns. who introduced an English lion as supporter for his Scottish arms, and one of the unicorns was sent south of the border and incorporated in the English arms to show that the countries were indeed united. The unicorn has long been a symbol of Scotland's identity, and indeed was first used in an early form of the Scottish royal coat of arms by William I in the 12th century, perhaps because in Celtic mythology the unicorn of Scotland symbolised innocence and purity, and was also seen as a symbol of masculinity and power. Also proudly forming part of the royal arms is the Scottish national flag, the St Andrew's Cross, which is perhaps the most often observed image of Scottish identity. The flag of Scotland, consisting of a white saltire on a blue field, or as defined by Act of Parliament, azure, saltire, argent, and so recorded, azure, saltire, argent, and so recorded in Lion Register as the arms proper and peculiar to the Kingdom of Scotland. But also one of Scotland's most recognisable symbols is the banner of Scotland, or more commonly, the ruddy lion rampant of Scotland, historically known as the Royal Standard of Scotland, or even the banner of the King of Scots. Used historically by Scottish monarchs, it differs from Scotland's national flag in that its correct use, apart from the monarch, is restricted to only a few gate officers of state, including the Lord Lion. Any unauthorised use is an offence by law, and in 1973, a merchant was fined £100 a day for using the banner wrongfully as a design on bedspreads. Heraldry in Scotland has from time beyond memory, and certainly as recorded from 1318 or thereabouts, when King Robert the Bruce appointed a Lord Lion, been overseen by the Lord Lion King of Arms, a great officer of the state, as I have said, and there are records of all subsequent Lords Lion. The one-time Lord Lion, Robin Blair, described the responsibilities of the Lord Lion as threefold. One is to exercise what is called the royal prerogative in granting coats of arms in Scotland. The second, to operate a judicial function as a court, to ensure that arms are used lawfully, and to make judicial decisions in relation to the right to arms, titles and dignities. And thirdly, is responsible for state ceremonial, such as the opening of the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland and elsewhere, and related service in St Giles Cathedral. The Lord Lion holds his post directly from the Crown, although his precise powers were not set down until a statute of 1592. But he now acts daily under an Act of the Scottish Parliament dated 1672, which established a register of arms called the Public Register of All Arms and Bearings in Scotland. And this is maintained today, and which has been described as the most magnificent heraldic document in Europe. The Lord Lion is permitted to grant arms to any virtuous and well-deserving person with Scottish connections, and he has the final word as to what form the arms should take. There is no such thing in Scotland as a family coat of arms, and Lord Lion ensures that no coat of arms is like any other. Several people of the same name and sharing the same coat of arms would be totally confusing. In Scotland, where the clan system long prevailed, almost all arms granted to persons of the same name are based on the arms of the chief of that name, even though no blood relationship can be proved. However, distinctions known as differencing there had to be, sometimes referred to, sometimes dealt with as a change of colour or tincture, or by the introduction of a chevron or some other device. As the number of armatures became greater, they developed a system of bordures, or borders, to act as differences. At that point, it should always be remembered that arms once validly acquired, like other property, become as much a person's property as anything else he possesses. And in Scotland, this exclusive right of property in armorial bearings is a serious legal fact. Misuse of another's coat of arms is an offence liable to action and penalties in Lion Court. This right of exclusive property was recently exemplified when the attention of Lion Court was drawn to President Trump's attempt to brand a new golf course in Aberdeen with arms that had been registered with the court. The arms used by, arms that had not been registered with the court. The arms used by President Trump were a near identical copy of arms granted to Joseph Edward Davies in 1939 and were therefore not available to be used without breaking the law. Arms were subsequently granted suitably differenced to avoid any such breach to Trump International Golf Course Limited in 2012, which indicates the authority of Lord Lyon to grant corporate arms in addition to personal arms. There are numerous other instances where unlawful use has been terminated on the command of Lord Lyon, and perhaps the most spectacular of which being when a number of heraldic stained glass windows were removed from Glasgow Cathedral. And in 2015, Ayr United Football Club was referred to the court of Lord Lyon for the use of unregistered arms in its crest, and League One side Airdrieonians also fell foul of heraldic law and were forced to alter their badge. In further pursuit of these symbols or images of Scotland, Scottish heraldry and identity, I invite your attention to these 17th century clansmen wearing a full-length garment known as the Great Kilt, where the upper part could be worn as a cloak. From this there later emerged in the 18th century the small kilt, which was essentially the bottom half of the Great Kilt, worn here in great style by this modern-day Scotsman, and displaying his tartan. But it was not until the 18th century that the clan tartans became conscious and acknowledged symbols of identity, although, as Sir Thomas Inney of Lerney pointed out, tartans are the complement of armorial bearings, badges and standards. Clearly today, the various tartans are associated with clans, and such names as Bruce, Campbell and Fraser are easily called to mind. Indeed, Scottish heraldry has been considered inseparable from the subject of clanship. The Scottish Parliament passed the Scottish Register of Tartans Act in 2008 to create a repository for the preservation of tartans and as a source of information for tartans, and which finally confirms the importance of tartans as part of the Scottish identity. The object of using heraldry is to make identification as instant and complete as soon as possible. So let us consider various other ways of achieving that. In the case of a clan chief being the head of his or her clan, who must be recognised as such by Lord Lyon and must possess the undifferent arms of their name, he is permitted to wear his exclusive badge, which you will now see, by the form in his personal crest in a plain circlet described with their own motto. You will also his entitlement to 3 eagle feathers behind the circlet of the crest badge, where a chieftain of a branch of a clan is permitted only 2, and an armigerous clan member only 1 feather behind the badge. Any Scot who has recorded Scottish arms in the Lion Registry has the right to wear his crest as a badge. As a result of the survival of an old and interesting custom recognised in the heraldic law, members of the clan are permitted to wear a crest badge. In former times, many chiefs gave to their followers a metal plate of their crest to wear. The crest badge was affixed to the clansman's clothing by a strap and buckle, and when not in use, the strap and buckle were coiled around the crest badge. Today, the old metal plate crest badge has been replaced by a metal representation of the chief's crest, encircled by a metal strap and buckle, which you'll see clearly displayed here, and having the chief's motto engraved on the strap. This is the only way in which a clansman is entitled to display his chief's crest. Only the chief and his heir wear the crest without the strap and buckle. I cannot close without a short reference to those colourful images of identity, namely the flags, which, in addition to those which must be flown without authority, are those specifically identifying the owner, which are authorised especially by the Lord Lion. I refer, of course, to the banner, which you'll see there in the top left-hand corner, which it is the personal banner of the owner of a coat of arms, rectangular in shape and of varying sizes. It shows his personal coat of arms, granted him by the Lord Lion or inherited as of right from an ancestor and protected to him by the law of Scotland. It is the visual equivalent of his name and is flown over his house and is an indication that he is there. There are two special heraldic flags which further identify the owner. They are the standard, guidon, pennon and pinsel. The standard is a long, narrow, tapering flag of varying lengths according to the rank of its owner. The sovereign has a standard of 8 yards in length, or nearly, well, I'm trying to do the calculation in meters, and would be nearly 8 meters. And lastly, knights and feudal barons 4 yards, or just under that in terms of meters. Although recent changes following the abolition of the feudal system in Scotland in 2004, after more than 1,000 years, may have a bearing on the future in some cases, it does not necessarily indicate the physical presence of its owner. Time does not permit a more detailed description of these interesting and colourful signs of Scottish identity, except to say that the guidon may be described as a miniature standard, some 4 feet long, and still granted by Lord Lion in accordance with strict armorial regulations. The pennon, a medium-sized personal flag, and like the banner, indicated the personal presence of the owner. As a tribute to all here this afternoon, my own standard, granted by Lord Lion in 1996, some 4 yards in length. In conclusion, I can do no better than repeat the words of Lord Lion, Sir Thomas Innes of Lerney, who said, "In the glowing pageantry of emblazoned armorial, the annals of Scotland and its surnames are written in characters which inspire the mind and thrill the eye, but which above all proclaim our native pride and the kindly use of Scottish clanship and kinship." Thank you.
Thank you very much for your interesting and illustrative conference about the Scottish heraldry. Is there any question to Mr. Douglas? No question, so thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Just I'm wasting.
No, I should use the time after
Okay.
5 minutes.
Okay, you finish?
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
I hope I haven't overstayed my welcome.
your time now?
It's 5.
No, I think.